you'll have to forgive me for wearing a beanie indoors, but my hair is a mess and I cannot be bothered to deal with it right now. So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Hazel Jane, and today we are back with another edition of Monsters, Myths and Makeup, which, if you didn't know, is a little series that I have where we get to delve into the weird and wonderful world of monsters and myths, whilst I attempt to bring you stories to life through a makeup look inspired by the creatures behind the legends. Now, obviously, we are starting to get our teeth firmly into October and Halloween season in general. For the entirety of October, I will be uploading a new episode every single week, as well as a crazy amount of other content basically every day, just everywhere. If you're interested in mythology and or makeup, I would recommend hitting subscribe because that basically covers a lot of what I do. And if you're already subscribed, thank you very much. Please feel free to hit like if you enjoy the video. Now, last week we looked at one of the most successful horror franchises in like the movie industry and the true stories and true cases that inspired those films, i.e. the Conjuring universe and the lifetime works of Ed and Lorraine Warren. So, very classic Halloween haunting ghost stories. This week I wanted to go back to some sort of kind of classic horror Halloween iconography or creature that is very heavily associated with this season. So this week's myth is based around spiders, which I'm not a big fan of, I have to be honest. Because I've worked out I've done some kind of like spider themed makeup around Halloween for like the last 6 years now, so it's kind of become a bit of a thing. It's a bit of a tradition for me to do some kind of spider makeup look. And last year in particular, the spider look that I did garnered a lot of attention. So I kind of needed to like elevate the look and kind of top my record from last year, because obviously I'm going to be doing a spider look for Halloween this year as well. I've got to keep that going. But I thought it was the perfect opportunity to look into some kind of arachnid-based mythology, because let's face it, arachnophobia, one of the most common phobias that you can have, and spiders in general, a very fitting creature for Halloween. Now, today's episode will be in like a voiceover style, which is why I actually have eyebrows at the moment. Just because the look that I did for this myth was quite complicated. It was a full face look, there was a lot of detail involved. So I wanted to be able to deliver that look properly whilst being able to share the story with you. So there will be lots of lovely like B-roll footage of the makeup being applied and the look coming together whilst I info dump on you guys like this. No point beating around the bush with this now, so when you're ready, grab a Red Bull, grab a Monster, grab a seat, and let's go. For those of you who are interested in the makeup side of things, I will leave links to all the products that I use in the description box down below. And as always, I will apologise in advance for any and all errors in pronunciation of words, names, or places. A lot of the research that I do is into quite ancient history from various different places all over the world. Some of the words that I come across are really hard to say. I do always try my best, but please feel free to correct me in the comments down below if I do get any of them wrong. So today's mythology is obviously linked to spiders, but it is in fact a shape-shifting spider, and it's a part of Japanese yokai folklore, which are spirits or supernatural beings in Japanese tradition. Known as the Jorogumo, she is a spider who can transform herself into a beautiful young woman who will then seduce men, lure them in, make them fall in love with her. I'm sure you can see where this is going. So we're talking seduction, danger, silken threads going everywhere. Like, her legend has all the markings of true femme fatale energy, just with more legs. Now, the stories about her usually involve isolation in some degree, so mountain paths, waterfalls, old inns, and the ending is rarely good for whoever meets her. Sometimes she will slowly drain a man's life, and in other cases he will just disappear completely. But, as always, the details will vary depending on the region and the storyteller. So, let's talk about the name because it does really set the tone for this legend. Jorogumo is written as this, or sometimes this, and it combines the word for woman and spider. The interesting part is that the Joro in older Japanese could also mean a courtesan, so there's this kind of built-in suggestion of seduction in the name, to the point that some early translators literally went with prostitute spider, which is harsh, but it kind of shows how the name tied this creature to various different ideas about temptation and danger. There's another sort of interpretation of the name that translates to like binding bride or entangling bride, which is like, it's a bit more on the poetic side, but it's still quite ominous. And I mean, it's pretty perfect for a figure who literally traps people in like silk. Now, there are two common ways that she is described. First of all is the beautiful woman, elegant, often in a kimono, waiting near a waterfall or along a road. The alternative, which is often considered to be her true form, is the spider creature. Now, sometimes this is just a full-blown spider, and other times it's kind of like a hybrid with a woman's upper body sitting on top of a spider's lower body. In the stories, her pattern is usually the same. Lure a man in, make him comfortable, and then slowly weaken him until he can't escape. Some versions will say that she keeps her victims alive for a while, and others are a little more abrupt. And interestingly, water is a bit of a recurring theme in the legends that surround this woman. Is it woman or creature? Because I mean, technically, if it's a female spider who takes the form of a woman, but it's still a creature. It's a female spider, not a woman. I don't know if I'm just being pedantic to myself for this. Let me know in the comments down below. Would you refer to her as a woman? As a her? Or would it be an it because it's a spider, but it's a female spider? I've confused myself now. Either way, a lot of the tales about this creature are set near waterfalls, especially the famous Joron waterfalls in Izu. And we'll get onto that one next because it is probably the most famous Jorogumo story. So the Joron Falls story goes like this. At the falls, there allegedly lived the Jorogumo, mistress of the waterfall, which, side note, such a cool title. And local legends told the tale of a man who rested beside the waterfall base when the Jorogumo tried to drag him under. She threw spider webs around his leg to try and bind him, but the man was somehow able to remove the webbing and instead wrapped it around a tree stump, which was then dragged under the falls instead of him. And after that, the people of the village generally tried to steer clear of the falls, which, I mean, fair. Then one day, a visiting woodcutter, who was a stranger to these local legends, was attempting to chop down a tree by the waterfall when he dropped his prize axe into the water. And suddenly, a beautiful woman appears out of the water and returns it to him. But she says, "Don't tell anyone that you saw me." Now, he promises to the woman not to share the details of his encounter with her. But a few days later, after a few drinks, he just can't hold it in anymore. He can't keep the secret. And he ends up telling his friends whilst at this banquet or something. And then the next day, he's gone. Some will say that he went to sleep that night and then simply never woke up, whilst others claim he was actually pulled under the waterfall by a bunch of silken threads, only for his body to be found floating in the water the next day. While there are even further tales that say that he just simply vanished. And this kind of pattern shows up in a lot of other stories too. This idea of a promise being broken and then punishment as a result of that. Sometimes she'll appear at roadside inns and will take in lonely travellers who are then never seen again. And a lot of these were used as sort of cautionary tales, i.e. don't wander too far, don't trust strangers, and maybe pay attention to local warnings. Now, the Joron Falls story in particular, though, does have an interesting alternative version, in which the woodcutter does fall in love with a woman that he meets at the waterfall, and he would visit her every single day. But as each visit went on, the man seemed to grow weaker and weaker, and the priest of a nearby temple suspected that the man had been seduced by the Jorogumo mistress, so he accompanied him to the water to chant a sutra. Whilst there, the priest noticed that a thread of spider silk had begun reaching towards the woodcutter, so he let out this thunderous yell, at which point the silk retracted back into the water. And a side note on that, because there's something really creepy but really cool about the visual of these, not even because normally it's like, oh, spiders start creeping, but the idea of like the silk thread slowly creeping up out of the water, it's quite a striking image to me. I don't know, there's just something really cool about it. Anyway, despite now knowing that this woman was in fact a Jorogumo, the woodcutter decided that he basically just didn't care, and he actually tried to gain permission from the deities of the mountain to marry the spider. But his request was denied. But again, kind of leaning back into that, I don't care if she's this like mythical spider creature who's inevitably going to kill me, I just want to be with her, the woodcutter basically just throws himself into the water, allowing himself to become tangled up in spider webs and dragged below the surface. Now, the image of the Jorogumo became really popular in like the Edo period. Artists like Toriyama Seiken included her in illustrated yokai collections, and a lot of these books shaped how people imagined her, often as this kind of half-woman, half-spider hybrid. Folklorists in the Meiji era later wrote down these stories, and that's when they started to feel a lot more sort of official. Now, before that, they were mostly oral traditions, so the details changed depending on who told them. And there is an interesting crossover here, because there is an actual spider species in Japan called the Yoro spider. Big golden webs, very, very striking, and it's likely that the folklore and the real spider sort of influenced each other over time. Now today, the Jorogumo is still found pretty much everywhere in Japanese media. She shows up in anime, manga, video games, sometimes as a villain, other times as more like a misunderstood character. You'll see versions of her in series like Monster Hunter and other fantasy games as well. She's also incredibly popular in art, tattoos, and even tourism. So places like the Yoren Falls use this legend as a way to try and attract visitors. You'll find a lot of signs telling her story, as well as local souvenirs. The idea of her having this sort of femme fatale energy, this seductive but dangerous kind of juxtaposition, I think is probably part of the reason why her legend has endured for so long and remains so popular to this day within Japan. Similar to tales of sirens, or to an extent even creatures like Medusa and the Gorgons from Greek mythology, that juxtaposition of like the seduction and the danger and that kind of power, it's what makes them so enduring. And in my personal opinion, I just always have like a special kind of love and respect for mythology that focuses on like very strong female figures, even if they are presented in more of like a villainous type. Because I'll be honest, my opinion is that the majority of them are actually more of the misunderstood villain type. Obviously, a lot of these female-based creatures are hugely influenced by sort of societal norms at the time, and they're very influenced as those societal norms changes, as we saw with things like Pandora and Pandora's Box. And what's fascinating about this one in particular is this iteration of a spider woman specifically is not just limited to Japan. Obviously there are hundreds of species of spiders all over the world. And again, like I said at the beginning, arachnophobia is probably one of the most common phobias that you have. But going back to Greek mythology, there is Arachne, which was a woman who turned into a spider after challenging one of the goddesses. Some Native American traditions, the Spider Woman is both a creator and a teacher, and in West African stories, you have Anansi, the trickster spider. Whilst not necessarily a woman or hybrid, it's still a very big sort of cultural figure, and again, it's an interesting example of how spiders are represented within mythology and folklore. Some people believe that spiders are so prominent within mythology because they obviously literally weave webs, and it connects to ideas about fate, patience, and traps, and obviously for storytellers and this idea of like oral traditions passed down through generations, it's a perfect metaphor for relationships, danger, and the unknown, essentially. Now, I didn't find as much information about this creature as I have with some of my other topics, so if any of you have any additional stories or knowledge of this creature, this legend, or even any kind of like spider-based mythology you know from your own culture, countries, whatever, please leave a comment down below letting me know. I love hearing other people's experiences and stories, and I love that we have this little like community of storytellers now where everyone just shares what they know. My original plan for like the look I was going to do for this video was very much a kind of like a hybrid spider woman, but I'll be honest, the sort of technicalities of it wasn't going to work for the format that I wanted to do it. So very much last minute, I switched it up, and this is the result. To be fair, I am quite happy with how it's turned out. I realised I hadn't planned out a skull look this year, which is another thing that I do every year at Halloween without fail. So being able to combine this kind of spider skull thing felt quite fitting, because obviously she kills people. So that is the legend of the Jorogumo, the spider woman from Japan, whose legend has been told for centuries, but still inspires new stories to this day. I would love to know your guys' interpretation and general thoughts on this legend. Again, if you know anything else, please let me know. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think of the lore, let me know what you think of the look. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons for helping to support this channel and helping me decide the kind of content that you guys get, the topics, the makeup looks. If you want to get involved, see a bit more behind the scenes, early access, sneak previews, links will be in the description down below. Don't forget to follow me on all of my other social medias as well, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Patreon, just so that you don't miss any of the other random crap that I upload, or at least specifically for October, any of the other Halloween crap that I upload. But other than that, I hope you all have a fabulous day. I love and appreciate all of you very, very much, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.